Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lost and Found podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Powers, and this is a show that exists to bridge the gap between feeling completely lost and actually building a life that feels like your own. Today, I'm talking with someone who has literally rebuilt his life from the ground up and then turned that lived experience into a blueprint for teens and young adults around the world. Colin MacDonald is the co-founder of Not Therapy, a next-gen model of support for teens and young adults that blends 7-day coaching, community, real-life structure, and guides that actually walked this path. Colin and his co-founder Haley have both spent their teen years in and out of wilderness programs, therapeutic boarding schools, and traditional treatment. Those systems stabilized them, but they didn't actually provide what they needed most: relatable mentors, real-world guidance, and day-to-day support to bridge the gap between getting help and actually living. So they built a solution that they wish they had. Today, Not Therapy helps young people move from feeling stuck to in motion, and the numbers are wild. The vast majority of their clients stay out of higher levels of care. Most of their clients find work or a sense of purpose within a couple of months. Their families report less conflict at home, and more students are actually enrolling in and finishing college semesters. Parents describe it as calm after the storm, and the clients describe it as finally getting to live the life they were meant to live. In this conversation, we're going to unpack how that happens, talk about what traditional therapy can't always reach, why Gen Z can name their feelings but still feel stuck, and the specific habits, structures, and conversations that actually move a young person and a family forward. So whether you're a parent, a 20-something trying to rebuild life after treatment, or someone who just wants an honest roadmap for mental health and purpose, this episode is designed to leave you with concrete steps you can start using today. So Colin, welcome to the Lost and Found podcast.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I'm absolutely ecstatic to be here today, and just really appreciate the connection and always love having these types of conversations.
I'm honored to have you here and to use this platform to help you share your story. So this is a great match. So you've had kind of a whirlwind of a life growing up and then having a tumultuous teenage years period. And then you get out and you're expected to live on your own and use all those tools and things that they gave you that were allegedly helpful. And then turned out maybe weren't. And so you restarted your life again and created your therapy program and your business with your friends. So I'd love it if you could kind of break down those chapters of your life and tell us those defining moments that you had where you were pivoting and dealing with a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. When I kind of review everything that's happened to me, when I can really think about things starting to get a little hairy, was probably when I was in about 4th grade or so, just kind of acting out in school, diagnosed with ADHD, got on medication for ADHD. I was always kind of an outward facing kid, really loved being the center of attention, was involved in sports, had a lot of friends. But when I started getting on those ADHD medications, I remember it kind of felt like it was numbing me a lot. And then that led to going to therapy when I was in 4th grade and kind of starting to take this traditional route of what therapeutic professionals, medical professionals want you to take, right? So then that wasn't really working. And then middle school started kind of goofing off in class, not doing as well. And I could notice towards the end of middle school, it just really started kind of tanking a little bit. And then when I got to high school, I was playing a lot of sports, had a lot of friends still, but my home life, I would say, had really bad anger management. And then I was also really into chasing ladies around. And when those things wouldn't work out, I would take it super personally. And then I started getting depressed because of things like my social life. And I had a great home life. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. I'm from the suburbs outside of Seattle. But it really started to impact my relationship with my family, especially my relationship with my father. And we were just getting these big fights. And so then I started going in and out of psych wards, right? And because I would be super depressed or be super angry. And so I think I first went to like an outpatient type program that was recommended by a psychiatrist or a therapist, and then went in and out of 8 different psych wards where I'd be in there from anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks. And I just remember when that kind of started happening, it wasn't working clearly, right? And the therapy wasn't working. And so my parents started thinking outside the box a little bit. And that's when I guess my mom found wilderness therapy. I know wilderness therapy and therapeutic boarding schools are really in the media right now. There's a lot of Netflix shows coming out and
Yeah.
documentaries about them. Yeah,
No, I was
exactly.
like, I wrote that down separately. It was like, I want to ask him about Wayward, but I don't know
Yeah.
if he's already talked about it and he hates that question now. But
Oh, no. I think now that I'm older, right, in my 30s, for a long time, it was this thing of like, I can't believe that was a real thing, and then now it's kind of coming out in the age of social media where people who have gone to these programs are like, that was kind of a weird thing that we went through.
more than weird,
Yeah.
it was probably really messed up. Like, definitely, I don't know if it helped more than it hurt or what, but
Yeah. No, I can talk about that a little bit. So what I will say is when I went to wilderness therapy, it was kind of like my parents have been trying everything, and there's a lot of ways that people go to these programs, and one they call it getting gooned, where someone comes in the middle of the night, takes you out of your room, and that's depicted in like all the documentaries. I was watching this one documentary that wasn't even about wilderness therapy; it was actually like a murderer show, and it was this kid, and like randomly halfway through, they're like, he started really struggling, so we had these two people like pick him up in the middle of the night and send him to Utah. And so I was like, oh man, this kid went to these programs too, right?
yeah.
And so I remember my parents kind of tricked me into going. They told me I was going to like a 30-day program, and I would have been in and out of it so much that I was like, oh, it's another 30-day program. They showed me a video of kids backpacking. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go for 30 days, come back home. And I just remember when I was flying there, and this will get to like kind of the pivotal moment. I was flying to Vegas to go to Utah with my dad. And he started crying, and I was like, why are you crying? I'm going to be gone for 30 days, And he just said, it's going to be okay, buddy. Like everything will be fine. And so then, I get off the plane, I get picked up by these two people. They drive me to Utah, and I'm asking them, where am I going? And they say, we don't really know. We just pick kids up and we drop them off. So I get there, and, they take all my clothes, and then they blindfold me and drive, like, I don't know how long it was, felt like 3 hours out into the desert of Utah. And then they just drop you off, and you're with a group, and they would teach us the primitive skills that we needed to know. But then after 2 weeks, I got put out in what they would call the field. For that whole time, my parents had told me it was 30 days. And when I got out there, I got put in this group with all of these other kids my age. I was 16 at the time. And I was like, how long have you guys been out here? They had beards. They were so dirty. And some people had been there for 6 months. And I was like, well, my parents told me it'd only be 30 days, right? And then they said, oh, dude, no one's ever left in 30 days. And when you get out there, you can't talk to your parents. You can only communicate with them through letters. The therapist comes out and talks to you once a week. And so that was a huge pivotal moment after all of these steps that I had taken, right? Where I'd gone into psych wards and outpatient and never really realized how bad it had gotten until that moment. And at that moment, I remember I was on my little mat. I turned over and I just started crying because I thought to myself, am I really that bad of a kid? Like, am I really that bad of a kid that I'm living in the desert of Utah right now with a bunch of dirty guys? And my parents thought I was that bad that they had to send me away to this place that I didn't even know existed. Like maybe nowadays, but back then, in the 10 range, or maybe even a little before that, like 2009, 2010, like social media wasn't big or anything. Like Facebook had just came out, I think. So it's all of a sudden going from there, and also like people not even knowing where I went because I didn't even know where I was going.
Right. Yeah.
It was one of those. Yeah, exactly. And so that moment, I was really like, wow, am I really that bad that I'm in this situation? Have I really made that many mistakes that my parents almost feel like they didn't want me, which obviously wasn't true, but that's how you feel when you're 16 years old getting sent to one of those situations. So I would say that was the first really pivotal moment. And then the second phase of my life then went from there straight to a therapeutic boarding school, which was in North Idaho, where you're in a boarding school. It's in the woods. We had no phone, no internet. If we swore, we had to chop wood for hours and hours. There was tons of rules. Super structured. You go to therapy every day in that program, like group therapy or individual therapy. But I will say, like, what I really got out of it was the structure helped me. I wasn't doing well in school, so it helped me kind of get into college, right? And all you can really do is work out. So I worked out, made some lifelong relationships, which will tie into like not therapy, but it helped me get into college. And so then I went straight into college and had so many ups and downs, and just, at first went all in on just being in a college and being in a fraternity. And that led to me almost failing out of college and trying to figure it out. But, made it through college, ended up kind of figuring out the first time what I thought my purpose was. And for me, that was working in sports. I'm from Seattle, love the Seattle Mariners. And I remember my dad asked me like, well, what do you love? And I was like, I love the Seattle Mariners. And he said, you should go work for the Seattle Mariners. And I didn't even know what that would look like, but I remember going to my college admissions counselor and so like, I want to work for the Mariners. And, she gave me some internship opportunities. And within 2 years of graduating college, just based on me following this passion and this purpose I had, I was in the front office of the Seattle Mariners wearing a suit, working for my favorite sports team. And it was the first time I realized like putting my mind to something that I really want, which was probably the first time since putting my mind of I really didn't want to be in treatment anymore, was such a pivotal moment for me. So that was kind of the second pivotal moment of like, what does it mean to pursue a purpose or something that you're really passionate about? And then the third and final one, so that, I had a career from when I graduated when I was 21 till about when I was, 30 years old is when I started Not Therapy. But when I turned 28, I got super into personal development. I call it like my self-improvement movement. I got into life coaching and going into retreats and just really surrounding myself with people that really inspired me.
Yeah.
So when you start doing that work, right, it's all about what's your purpose? Like, what are you here on earth to do? And one fact about for both me and my co-founder, Haley, who has the same story as me, that's where we really connected, is about 10% of the people that we went to our therapeutic boarding schools with have passed away from mental health related issues or drug overdoses. And some of those, not even including that 10%, were incarcerated. My best friend from boarding school was incarcerated for like 3 years. And so we really started thinking like, what was the difference between me and them?
Yeah.
One of my best friends from boarding school passed away right around in this time period. And I had this like kind of vision where I had left the corporate world and I started trying to figure out what my next step would be. And I tried like doing solar sales and I thought about starting a roofing company, just kind of more of these like entrepreneurial type things. But there was something that was really calling me to like, I want to help people that have been in the same situation as me. And so I actually went to my boarding school therapist who I had a super up and down relationship with in boarding school, but he's been one of the biggest support systems I've had since. And I said, I want to like help people that have gone through the same situation. Like, what can I do? And he introduced me to another therapist that I knew from my boarding school that ran a life coaching program in Spain, a gap year for 18-year-olds.
Oh.
And yeah, and so he like allowed me to come live in Spain for a gap year semester. And I lived with 5 18-year-olds. And I just kind of went into it with practice what you preach. I lived in an apartment with them. So I was taking them to do ice baths in the ocean or cold plunges and doing breath work with them and just like helping them start to structure their life in a way that like I thought would be helpful for them. And the results were like really astronomical. Like their parents were saying, this is the best my kid has functioned. They're preparing to go to college. And that's when I was like, I think this is what my purpose is. And in those 3 months, once I fully committed to it, that's when I met Haley. We had one conversation where like we should start a company together because she wanted to do the same thing for girls. And that's kind of how we started Not Therapy. That was in the fall, like 2 years ago in the fall. And we launched in January of 2024.
Wow. Yeah, that is quite an epic arc there for your journey. That's incredible. And you and Haley, you did not attend the same boarding school? You met after?
No, yeah, we met when we were 30.
Okay.
So, but I mean, with these programs, they're so unique that the only people that understand them is the people who have gone through them. And so we got introduced through like a consultant and she said, I know this girl who's wants to do the same thing you're doing, except for girls. And we got one conversation. We had like the same business idea and we had totally different skill sets. And so we're just like, well, let's put our heads together. She's been a founder before me too. So she had that background. I'd been in sales for 8 years. So I had like the business development background. And so it just really was a match made in heaven to then start a company together.
Yeah, but that's so great and serendipitous that would work for you too. And I think it's very lucky that you pointed out that like you didn't do all of that completely on your own. Like you were able to look back on your life and say, okay, who do I admire that I trust that has possibly got an insight into this? Like I could go and talk to and just, bounce ideas off of them. And I think that's very lucky. Not a lot of people always have mentors for the area they want to be in. Breaking through that industry can be difficult, if you don't have that set up yet. So that's awesome that you were able to maintain those relationships and not burn those bridges despite how traumatic it probably felt and was when you were a teenager.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when I was in therapeutic boarding school, it was one of the worst experiences for the first probably year I was there for 18 months. So bad that I one night escaped from the boarding school and ran away because I felt like I was in a therapeutic prison, right? And I walked 180 miles to Spokane and slept on the side of the highway because I literally felt like I was escaping what in my mind was like the worst thing that could ever happen to me at that time, right? And when I talk about this tumultuous relationship with my therapist, it wasn't like I would have had that conversation if it hadn't been 10 years later, where, once I was in the real world, he kept showing up for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, going to these programs, I think there's plus and minuses. But when you're 16, 17 years old, you're so secluded from the outside world. You're so like, what the F is my life right now? And so being able to realize that you can go a lot further with others than you can on your own was something that I really developed in the time of pursuing career. If I want to get a promotion, I should have a mentor or something like that. And the other big piece and this we'll get into creating not therapy, but I had always wanted a mentor when I was in the phase that I had been in right when I left, right? Because there's no playbook for how to even transition to the next phase of your life.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the questions I had for you was, you said in the past that treatment eventually helped you stabilize and give you structure to go to college and to eventually be successful within the college environment. But all of these different therapies from fourth grade onward didn't actually give you what you needed to live your life or to feel fulfilled or to feel like you had ownership over how to fix yourself or how to address a problem when it would come up. So I'd love it if you could actually talk about what was missing from all those various stages of treatment that you guys have now. For not therapy, we're going to make sure this is included or this is changed.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's called not therapy, but we're also not saying therapy doesn't work, right? But a lot of times therapy is, you go into an office or on Zoom and you sit there and you're talking, and a therapist can't really talk back to you, right? And they can help you with giving you ways to address your emotions and talk about trauma, but they're not necessarily helping you with like, how do you actually start taking action on the things that you want? One of the biggest things that our clients have told us of what's the difference between us and therapy is they know that we understand what they've gone through. And you don't know anything about your therapist other than they went to school to be a therapist. Maybe they do have some similar life experience to you, but they can't tell you.
Yeah.
And so I think that from the get-go, we always say you go to therapy every Monday. A lot happens from that Monday to the next Monday. You might have something you want to talk to them about on Tuesday, and then you forget about it by Thursday. And then on Monday, you're talking about some old family trauma you had. And so that was one thing that felt like it needed to change, was having someone that you could pick up the phone, like a big brother, a big sister, that is there for you in the moment and helping you with real tangible skills or things you can do to move through those things, because that's real life. Another big piece is therapeutic programs. Even if you're just in an outpatient or inpatient, it provides a lot of structure. So it makes it easy to feel like you're having success there because, you're waking up at the same time. They make you go to bed at a certain time. You have things going on throughout the day. You have someone that's there to support you all the time, right? If you're having a rough day in a therapeutic program, you could go talk to someone, a staff, a therapist, whatever, but it really is not real life. Not even in a corporate setting are you getting that type of support, even though you're around people all the time. And so it's just not real life. And that was the thing. You can have a lot of success in a program, but it's not going to transmit into real life. It's not going to necessarily, like for me, it helped me get into college, but I was also in a classroom with 6 kids, right? And it's like one-on-one education. And so when I went to college and all of a sudden I'm in a discussion hall and there's 150 people in it, that's not what I had been doing for the last 2 years, right? And it just really comes back to like that daily support of someone that is there to talk to you when you need it, and not just harboring those emotions, holding those emotions in, because that's when a blow up happens or a slip up happens. And I think also when you're in those types of environments, the community of you're doing something really hard with other people who are going through it at the same time. But when you get into the real world, like my boarding school was made up of people from all over the world and all over the country. But then no one in my community has gone through that same experience, or at least I don't know anyone who has. And so that was another thing that felt really important to us, is how do you, one, have a mentor that has been through the same experience as you, but then how do you connect with people that have also had that same lived experience as you, that you can talk about things that you never would be able to talk about with just your casual friend because they have no idea what the experience is like.
Yeah. So for anybody that's listening now who might be interested in reaching out to you guys, say they're a parent and they that are dealing with these things, or is there an age limit for your clients? I guess I might want to ask.
Yeah, I would say, typically we're looking for people that are about to go through a big transition. So I would say anywhere from 16 to 29 years old, because once you get past, that 23 years old, then you're kind of like pursuing this like bigger purpose of like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
But when you're 16, you're focusing on graduating high school, going to college, maybe going to trade school. When you're in college, you're focusing on graduating college. It's a lot different for if you're in middle school or something like that, where you still got a bunch of school you have to go to, right?
Right. I was just curious because that was kind of my question there, is that if there's an age limit for who you're trying to create your target clientele or your ideal clientele, what would you say to somebody that's interested in sending their child there, or maybe they are a 20-something adult and they're thinking, you know what, I still have so much to deal with and I haven't actually done it in the right way, or I haven't done it in a way that seems to have helped me. I thought it did, but it hasn't. So what makes your program at Not Therapy special? What makes it stand out? And what would my week look like if I were to sign up as a client?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing is the 7-day-a-week support, right? We first off don't work with anyone who doesn't want to work with us, because I feel like in the treatment experience is often something's being recommended for you and it's not what you necessarily want for yourself. And we really believe that, most teens and young adults do know what they want to some extent. And it can be as basic as, I want to make more friends, I want to make money. And so I think for us, like, we don't work with anyone who doesn't want to work with us. And then we allow them, we're first year is just me and Haley. Now we have 5 coaches. We're going to hire more coaches. So we allow them to pick a coach that they most connect with, because that's, you want to enjoy the person that you're talking to pretty much every day. Right. And so we get that buy-in from our client that, hey, I really like Colin. I would love to work with him more. And then on top of that, we're kind of creating, a vision for, it's really hard for a 17-year-old to think a year down the road, but just even, what does a year for, if you had the best year ever, what would that look like? Right. And then what would in 3 months, the best 3 months look like? And then let's talk about just the first month of us working together. What would be insane if you accomplished it? Maybe getting a job and you join a rock climbing gym and you're able to get your license. Right. And then it really then breaks down to, what do we want to accomplish on a week-to-week basis? And just what does a good day for you look like? And then they start, even at a young age, to see how daily things lead to long-term outcomes, right? Because you can see how getting enough sleep and going to the gym and spending an hour reading or spending an hour going to some type of community event, then if you did those every day, don't you think you could maybe accomplish what you want in a year? So it really starts with just that kind of framework. But then on top of that, you're meeting with your coach at least twice a week, but at the same time, your coach is always available to you. So if you needed to meet with your coach every single day for an hour for the first month, we created it so that you could do that. So we're really trying to help you hit these goals that you have that are very tangible based on what you want, right? We're not telling them like, this is the framework that we know works. It's just like, keep rearranging things around what works for them. And I think that's just really what the beautiful part of it is. Like, we're always adjusting things and changing things. So, you're going to be talking to your coach a lot because they're there to help you, right? They're there because maybe you have a job interview and you're talking to them beforehand, and then you totally bomb the job interview, and then you can call your coach right after and talk through it with them. Yeah. And so that's like a big piece of it. We also have a built-in community into our program as well. So all of our clients will get on a call once a week, and it's not like a workshop or anything like that. It's really them talking about, man, Thanksgiving's coming up. I'm kind of nervous to be spending time with my family for the first time since I've gone to college. And all our coaches who have the same lived experience and all of our clients are there just having an open discussion. And then on top of that, once our clients kind of graduate, we work with them for 3 months at a minimum. Then we have retreats that they can go on, and then they build some of that in-person community. But we're really trying to, in those, whatever it needs to look like, there's not necessarily a formula for it. It's really about just keep showing up and holding someone accountable to the things that they think that they want. And so for us, it's really like, how do we start to build the puzzle pieces in their life through coaching that allows you to actually be really excited about the next phase in your life?
Yeah, I like that it's flexible for both ends, right? For the coach and for the client, but you're setting the boundaries and the expectations based on what the participant, the client, actually says that they want, right? Not what you expected a 25-year-old to be doing by now or expected a 16-year-old to be able to do by now. It's kind of like, all right, if I can get you to reach the first goal, it's like investing into yourself. You're putting in $1 every single day, and by the time you get out, you're 6 months worth of dollars richer.
Yeah.
You're getting closer, and it's so hard to explain to somebody when you're going through a self-development phase that like you looking at yourself in the mirror every day, day in and day out, you don't notice the change. Versus when somebody else at the end of the program who you haven't seen in a while, or at the end of your journey there, if they see you, they're like, wow, you've lost 30 pounds, or you actually saved up enough money to move out of your parents' house, or whatever it is. You don't notice yourself growing in that moment, but other people can see it. And so it's so hard to try and explain to somebody that if you stick with it, the transition and that transformative moment for you is just, once it actually clicks, it's awesome. But the day in and day out of the grind, it's not easy. To get what you want will require effort, no matter how small the goal is. So I think that that's awesome that you empower them by having them participate in that way. I think at least that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of really named it right there. I would say it's two things, right? When we're talking about accountability with them, because we're asking them what they want, when they don't follow through, it's not because I told them to do something. It might be something bigger. Hey, you said you really wanted to make new friends, but we were talking about going to this community event, right? Like a Pokemon card tournament.
Sure. Yeah.
What's stopping you from doing that? If that's what you really want, and then it might be something else. And so that's where sometimes therapy could be beneficial, because maybe it is like some crippling anxiety from something that happened in their past. So if someone says they want to go to therapy, we help empower them to find a therapist on their own, right? They actually pick a therapist, because even all these little actions, and this is something I say to all the people we work with and even parents, building self-confidence in a teen or young adult is about them following through with the things they tell themselves they're going to do. They might have this like big vision for who they want to be, but there are so many steps that they don't know how to take. And so they're just not taking the steps. And so by us helping it break down in a really manageable way for them, where we're also holding them accountable to the things that they say they want, that's how we've been able to have the success that we've had, because there's no playbook that we think is the right one. It's really like you have the answers within yourself, and we're just trying to help you make those answers come into fruition.
Yeah. Looking back on your own journey, were there moments where you lacked that accountability, or like was there a moment in your life where you weren't getting that kind of attention or like that kind of support that you can look back and go, wow, if I had had it in that moment, I probably wouldn't have gone down that path? Anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's, getting sent away, right? Before that time, I would tell my parents that I wanted a mentor or something, just someone who wasn't my parents and wasn't a therapist, that would just be willing to help me talk through things and then figure out what I wanted to do. And then I think also on top of that, the transition out, right? I knew I wanted to go to college, but I didn't know what it meant to be on top of studying and managing a social and academic life, right? Like those types of phases in my life. And even once I got into going into a career, I worked at 7 tech companies because I was trying to find the thing that really stuck for me. And that was even just once I finally kind of figured that out, I got a mentor in that, working in the career path that I had chosen. And that was even super helpful, because it at least gave me line of sight of why I was doing what I was doing and why I should be putting effort into certain areas.
Yeah, that sounds like it's a really crucial piece that you guys include in your programming. So that's really good. I know that you've also talked in previous interviews about teaching Gen Z to be emotionally fluent. So I'd love it if you could talk to us about what does it mean to be emotionally fluent, and what are you doing when you're teaching them, I know what I feel, but I want to turn that into, I know what I want to do with how I feel.
Yeah, I think that with social media and everything, there's so much outside influence, right? That you think you should be something that maybe you're actually not able to be that type of person, right? You don't have the same skills as the person that you really look up to that's a celebrity or an athlete or something. But I think everyone is unique, right? And so it's about finding what makes you unique and realizing, I would say, it's about riding the waves, right? You're going to have bad days and you're going to have good days, and you're going to have a couple good days that then you have one really bad day, and you think that all those good days are amounting to nothing, right? And so what I always just try and tell the people that we're working with is a good day turns into a good week and a good week turns into a good month, but a bad day doesn't mean you have a bad week. A bad week doesn't mean you're having a bad month, right? And a bad day doesn't mean you have a bad life. So I think it's really about zooming out and then always kind of reflecting it back to them and saying like, well, look how far you've came. I think helping them zoom out and just putting this back on them where I say, did you ever think you would even get to this point, right? When I first met you. And that in itself allows you to be a little emotionally fluid because you've ridden the waves, right? You've gone through the ups, you've gone through the downs. It's crazy when someone's having a really good week and then they're having a bad couple days and then be like, remember how good you were feeling last week? You can get back there. You can get back to that point. And I think for me too, it's just really one of those things where when you're working with a teen or young adult, things are going to feel like crises a lot, right? They're going to be like, oh, I didn't get asked to prom by the girl that I wanted. So we don't say that that's not a big deal.
Right.
It's just, how do you get back on the saddle, right? You're not going to let this define your life, especially with going to treatment program. That's the biggest thing. If someone doesn't start building some momentum afterwards, after they've just gone through something really hard, they're going to make it be like, well, I can't do this because of this situation I was in. So helping them zoom out and build that momentum to realize there's so much life ahead of you. Don't allow this one thing to define where you're at right now. And I think that's what I've just seen a lot, where not getting so stuck in your head and just like, how do we get you unstuck quicker? And I just think you can't do that with a traditional therapeutic model where you're meeting once, twice a week. It needs to be somewhat of a daily interaction where you're constantly reaffirming them, but also helping them see their potential. I see a lot of myself in the clients that we've worked with, and I know that they all have that same potential in them.
Yeah. And I think that's really good that you're keeping it as optimistic as possible, right? You're not using a bunch of toxic positivity to try and brainwash the client into thinking everything's fine, it'll be okay, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I think you started to talk about it. They might think I didn't get invited to prom, or I didn't make a good, SAT score, or my dad took my, car keys away. I am grounded. I can't drive my car. Like, in the grand scheme of things, we as 30 somethings, we know that that's not the end of the world. We know that you'll feel better later. You'll be happy again. But like when you're so used to being in that one mindset where like you kind of feel like the whole world might be against you, or like you just I can't seem to get it right. I can't seem to get this going correctly. That's all you think it's ever going to be. And so that's so tough to not invalidate what they're thinking and feeling, but also trying to ride that line where you're going, I promise you, based on stats, data, just longevity, history, like I promise you, there's so much more you're going to get to do. But if you focus on this one thing right now for forever and melt down, then yeah, it'll be so much harder to pull yourself back out of that hole.
Yeah. And I would also say too, that sometimes it's going to be harder than other situations, right? You might actually put yourself in a really tough situation. Maybe you got arrested or something like that, right? And some of our clients are really going through big life shifts. And so it's even about like, you need to work hard to get out of this situation, because on the other side of it, this is going to be something that really helps you. I can do hard things, right? And so I think that's another piece of it, is just really encouraging, like be like also down to earth of like, yeah, this is the situation you're in. This won't be the situation you're going to be in 2 months if you get yourself out of it, right? And I think one thing I really love about what we do, there's a little bit of an in-person part of it, but the other thing is we're not there doing it for them, right? We're on the phone telling them, kind of guiding them what to do, but we're also not doing it for them. And I think sometimes once they do the thing on their own, even though we're helping them kind of think through things, then it's like, you did that on your own. I was like kind of that good angel on your shoulder telling you the path to take, but I'm not doing this for you. You're doing it for yourself.
You're doing it. Yeah. It all leads back to empowerment. They feel empowered to make the choices, and just knowing that you have choice, that you have ownership over a decision for your life, can immediately make you feel that much more free. Even if you haven't made the decision yet, just knowing that you can, and either way, it'll turn out the way it's supposed to turn out. It changes things for sure. What have you noticed with your clients that have performed the best or have benefited the most from not therapies programs? What are maybe some characteristics of those clients that stand out to you? If somebody's coming into your program, is there a particular personality that would benefit the most? Is there a particular mindset or a mantra that they follow for those clients that seems to make them more successful versus others?
Yeah, I would say As simple as it sounds, they have a desire to change. They want to see a change in their life. I would say where we see a lot of success with clients is kind of that failure to launch phase. It's not all treatment kids. Maybe that's a part of it, and that's where we really started. But this is not something going on with people that went to wilderness therapy or therapeutic boarding school. It's going on with so many teens and young adults across America and across the world. And so I think they want to have they want to see something change, and they're willing to try something. I would say that's the biggest thing. And also, we're not telling them what they have to do, like I said, but you're trying the things that you want to try, and we're just holding you accountable to that. And I would say there's also this piece where their back is against the wall a little bit. Maybe they're 25 years old and they're living in their parents' basement, and their parents are getting really sick and tired of them not doing anything. And so they're like, I don't want to be living in my parents' basement anymore. And I don't know how to not do that. Right. Or we have another situation would be the kid is headed down a path and their parents are thinking about sending them to treatment. And we kind of help the parents get to a point where they're being really upfront. They're not lying to their kid. Hey, we're feeling really frustrated and we're looking into sending you to these wilderness programs. And that's where we can come in and tell our lived experience of like, this is kind of the path that you're headed down, but let's try and course correct and not have that happen, right? So it's a mixture of both where they're kind of feeling the pressure to make a change, and also they want to make a change. And it might be a lot harder than they think, but at the same time, as long as they're willing to try, then we usually can have phenomenal results.
Yeah. And I like that you're continuing to use the lived experience. That's how you build that connection and that trust with that client and with the parents too, because I'm sure they don't, if they've tried everything that they can think of to address this problem, I don't think any parent intentionally wants to send their child away or to a program that would harm them or make things worse, right? So I think that that's nice that they can chat with you first and learn a lot more about it and the benefits that you guys can offer. So let's say that somebody does come home from a wilderness program or a rehab facility or, residential treatment, like you said, that you may have gone through yourself. And if your team could design their first 30 days at home or their first 30 days of transition, what kind of structure or non-negotiable habits or tips or tricks or whatever would you offer to that client for their first 30 days of transition?
Yeah, I sometimes it's going to depend if they're going back home to live with their parents or maybe they're going to a college or something like that. But I think when you think about leaving a treatment center where you're waking up at the same time every day, you're going to bed, you're eating 3 meals a day, there's a ton of structure. And I would say most of the time when people are leaving treatment, they're kind of feeling the best they've felt in a while because they've been kind of secluded from the outside world. A lot of the old friends that they have aren't in the picture anymore. And so immediately we need to have their buy-in that like they want to continue this momentum. And that looks like creating structure. It doesn't have to be every hour of your day is planned out, but let's make sure that you're waking up and getting enough sleep, right? You're getting 8 hours of sleep. I would say a crucial thing for creating structure is going to school, having some type of job. You're not just like going back to the same life that you were living. And then on top of that, like another thing we're really looking for is when you're in treatment, you don't have a lot of time to just do whatever you want. So a lot of them pick up hobbies, right? They'll learn to play guitar or they'll be super into physical fitness. So how are we learning to use those hobbies in their day-to-day life? How do we get them into a music class, or how do we get them to join a CrossFit gym or something like that, so that then they have structure to their day where it's less time just sitting around not doing anything or falling into old habits where they're being held accountable to a job, to school, something like that. But then we're also strengthening that muscle of the things that they're interested in as well, right? So I think for the first 30 days, we're going to try and help you get a job or figure out what the next phase is. Maybe it's going to a trade school, maybe it's volunteering, where a lot of your time is taken up on something that you want to be doing. You want to make money, you want to go to school, you want to give back. And then on top of that, it's really how are you staying on top of just like the daily habits that you've been building for maybe a month, maybe 2 years, right? So that then immediately the structure of what you're coming from to what you're going to isn't totally different. So we're trying to recreate that. And then also too, we're trying to create it so they are utilizing their coach right off the bat. What we see a big switch happen is when they have their first struggle when they get out. And sometimes they're small, sometimes they're big, but they call their coach and their coach helps them through that moment. So then in their head, they're saying, oh man, Colin is really here to help me. And so that way we can help them kind of navigate the ups and downs as well. So they have the structure, they have some type of outside activity, continuing some of those healthy habits, but also they have someone that they can lean on that's also maybe not their parent. When we talk to parents as a kid's leaving treatment, we'll say, hey, when you're having fights, tell them to call their coach, right? And so then we're kind of breaking up that maybe typical pattern that they saw beforehand as well.
Right. Yeah. And is most of your clientele, can they join you virtually or do they need to be Texas based?
No, so we work with clients all across America. We've worked with coming up on 90 families in 2 years.
Oh, wow, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, so that's why we're expanding. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I would say with some clients, depending on the situation, we'll actually go fly out and spend 2 or 3 days with them and help them apply to jobs, help them join a gym, meet their families as well. So the family can kind of meet us outside of Zoom. And then that's when we kind of start creating structure, creating schedules and things like that. But then after that, it really is a virtual texting, FaceTime, whatever the mode of communication that the client really likes better. Some of it can be a lot over texting, right? Because that's how they like responding.
How they talk. Yeah.
But then it's, hey, you say you're going to clean your room. Send me a picture afterwards just so I can see the hard work you put in, right?
Yeah.
And so we're still being able to hold them accountable through that as well. But then there will usually be 1 or 2 Zoom calls involved. But yeah, it's mainly all virtual, minus that after we work with a client for a while, we'll invite them to retreats that we host that we kind of have all over the country. And so then they get in-person time with their coach at those retreats as well.
Oh, I like that. That's cool. Such a wide variety of opportunity to interact with you guys. So I think that's really neat. And you're keeping it modern, right? If sometimes it's virtual, sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's the group trips and stuff. So I think it sounds like it stays engaging. Not every day is the same day twice, right? And if you need your person, they're there for you. And so you're teaching them, that they can rely on someone, that maybe if their relationship with their parents is strained, there's another person there that will still help them. I think that's really cool. Do you guys offer therapies or opportunities for if there's siblings, if there's 2 children in a family, or do you only do one at a time kind of a thing?
I would say what usually has happened in those situations is we work with one sibling and then the parents are like, this works so well. You should work with my son or work with my daughter, right?
Yeah.
But, in those situations, we do have them work with a different coach.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's a common thing that we see when their kid is having success. They're like, oh man, my daughter could really use this as well. Right. So we do, we're open to kind of working with anyone. And we're also not blind to the things we can't do. If something becomes super intense, we'll say, hey, maybe there needs to be a higher level of treatment. We work with someone for 3 months, but if it's not working after a month, we understand it's a mental health company and we're not going to say, hey, no, you committed to 3 months. You have to work with us on that. We'll help them find something else. Right.
Right.
And so we're very much like running a mental health startup, essentially. I just wanted to help as many people as possible. Like I'm trying to, I can't solve the mental health crisis for teens and young adults in America, but if I can help an 18-year-old that then he totally changes his life and then he makes an impact when he becomes my age, like I feel like that's how we make a big shift.
Yeah, that's the modern version of pay it forward. I love that. The ripple effect of that one, you see it all the time on Instagram or social media, people saying, you're always one decision away from a completely different life. So you're enabling those clients to make that decision to change that life, right? You don't always notice your pivotal moments when they're happening. You can in hindsight, of course, but I love that. I'm glad that you keep that open. I would like to dig in a little bit more into the parent advice, or at least the business relationships that you have with parents, or lessons that you've learned from your own relationship with your parents too, because families have described you guys as the calm after the storm. But I'm wondering if you could maybe discuss a little bit about what are the biggest changes that you see when your clients go through these types of events, and what's changing in the young person, what's changing in the parents, and what's kind of changing in the home life itself to enable that success.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because if you look at what it was like when I was growing up to when my clients are growing up, there's so many things that parents are doing that they never did. Like they weren't parented that way. I would say one of the biggest things is they create a lot of what if scenarios by tracking their kids' location. They're always tracking their kids' location. And what I will always tell them is view this as a fresh start and don't view that the way your kid was in the past is how they are right now. Right. And like collect data points, which is, if they say they want to get a job, allow them to try and apply for jobs and interview for jobs before you just assume that they're not actually going to do that and they're just appeasing you. So I feel like that's a big piece of parents are so quick to try and, like we call it, going from a director to a trainer. Once your kid gets past like 16 to 18 years old, you should be training them and guiding them to become an independent adult. And I think today with COVID and things like that, when kids were a lot of our clients were in middle school, high school, they also need to realize that their kid is not them, right? Their kid is their own individual person. And so how are you kind of guiding your kid to become their own individual self and realize that it might not look like you? I think that's another big piece of it. And I think where we've had a lot of success with parents is just giving them a different point of view, and the lived experience comes back into play of, we're older than our clients, but we're not that much older than them. And so we're able to kind of give them this perspective from someone who's been in their kid's shoes of, this is realistically what might happen, but this is also realistically what might happen. And both can be true. And it starts with the parents a lot of times, right? Like if a parent is not willing to change, then the work we do doesn't work as well. Right. And so I think it's just kind of this delicate line of a parent catches their kid smoking weed for the first time when they get out of treatment. And the parent's like, he's back where he was and we need to send him back to treatment. But actually your kid has been in treatment for 2 years and is in a totally different place. Same thing, zooming out and being like, look how far your kid is. Did you ever think that they would get to this point? And so let's take a chill pill and just talk about how we're going to handle this in a way that's actually effective and not just being somewhat like of a director in their life when they're trying to become an independent adult.
Yeah. And how is your relationship now with your parents? And you mentioned early in the interview that things were really tumultuous when you were in middle school, high schooler, and then you get out after college and it started to get better. How has that kind of changed for you? And did your parents do anything in particular that you wish that they had stopped doing or they had started doing and it was helpful?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I appreciate you asking it. I would say that a big piece with my parents that's a lot different than what we see with a lot of parents is they actually had less guidelines for me when they left. They really said, when I left treatment, we made you go to treatment and you just did a lot of work. We just want you to go to college and graduate college. And so they didn't define what my college experience needed to look like. And so then I was allowed to have my own ups and downs. And when I really needed them, I would call them and ask for guidance, right? And I think parents are so quick to try and control the situation. And my parents just were never like that. My dad always says that his job as a parent is to help grow me and then help me fly and learn things on my own and become the person that I want to become. And I think that whole director to trainer mindset, my parents really did want just what was best for me and they didn't care what that looked like. And they were just there to support me. And, nowadays, my parents are two of the people I talk to the most. I call them almost every day. I'm just talking to them. They're super excited for me all the time. And so they became my biggest fans once they kind of guided me and knew I was going to be in the right direction. But they were never going to tell me that it needed to look a certain way. And so I think that was one of the biggest things. And I think parents today are wanting to be in so much control because they're living in so much fear.
Yeah. Well, and that's so hard, right? That you're watching your heart live outside of your body and you're like,
Yeah.
why is it not beating correctly? How come they haven't figured it out? And it's like, okay, remember, it's their first time on earth as well.
Yeah.
Their first
Yeah,
time
exactly.
being 16. It's their first time being 18 and making mistakes too. And I'm not a parent, but I can only imagine how difficult that is, right? To not try and control the outcome. What would you say to a parent or someone who might be listening now? They have a child that is in an inpatient facility or they are in a residential treatment opportunity, whatever that may look like nowadays. Their child is there and they're trying to be supportive during that process and eventually for the transition home. What are things that parents could be doing now to support their child while they're going through that particular kind of intense treatment?
Yeah. I think, and this is something my parents did as well, and we tell parents this all the time, be super involved, show up to all the visits, be on all the calls, make it, your kid is going through a massive change that you somewhat force them to do. And things aren't going to change unless you also change the way you're parenting a little bit, right? And also just setting it up so that at the beginning, you're seeing what kind of supports that your kid thinks they need. And so if your kid is kind of telling you what they're hoping their life looks like afterwards, help them create that life so that they're also excited to come home and be back with you again. And I think that is one of the biggest things, that if your parents are showing up and they're always there for you and they're supporting you in this journey, that's how you start to rebuild that relationship, where when they come out, it really is a fresh start. And like also viewing it as a fresh start, like that you sent them away for a reason, but it also is not going to fix everything. I would say it's more of putting a Band-Aid on it, and that there's going to be ups and downs. And so you need to view it as a fresh start and guide them through those ups and downs. And also just not living in the past, right? You sent your kid away because things were bad, but that doesn't mean things can't get better. And it also doesn't mean things might be bad at certain points. So also just while they're in treatment and you're working with the treatment team, be preparing for that.
That's really great advice. I appreciate that. I've had friends or family members that have had children that have had difficult behavioral issues or, addictions or concerns or eating disorders or worries. And sometimes treatment facilities have been involved in that. Sometimes it's just as little as like AA. So I've seen it happen in my own family, and I've seen it happen to some friends where they've lost their relationship with their parents because of these issues that have come up throughout their life. And I was curious when I was thinking about it today, listening to some of your interviews, I wanted to know if there's ever a point where the parents or the kids should end their relationship. Have you noticed in your own business practice or in your personal experience, is there ever a reason where that relationship needs to be let go? Because I know sometimes people judge parents who keep trying to take care of their kids that have relapsed or stolen money from them or who have had really hard times. And other times there's some people judge them for cutting it off completely and being like, look, you've kind of hit your last straw here at this house, or you've broken the rules too many times, whatever that may be. So I'm curious what your perspective is, or if there's a particular suggestion you would have about whether or not if there's ever a point where that relationship should not continue.
Yeah. I mean, I think it really depends if the kid's under 18 or over 18, but let's just use over 18 because that's when they're technically an adult, right? If your kid is not taking the support you're offering and it's just like banging your head against a wall, what I hear a lot from 18-year-olds is, I want you to treat me like an adult, right? And adults pay for their car, to pay for the rent, they have jobs, they have responsibilities. And so if you're not able to foster that in the home, I think it's okay to say, hey, this isn't working. And you say you want to be an independent adult. So let us help you do that, right? And if they're still saying, no, I don't want your help, then I think sometimes it is okay to do that. And where I actually see that the relationship is rebuilt is then when they try and do it on their own and it's just not working, they will come back to you and say, I could really use your help. And I think that's the point that you're wanting to get to. That guide point is like where you can actually be a guide for your kid. And instead of just banging your head against a wall saying, why won't my kid change? Your kid will learn a lot more from life experiences than that you telling them how they should live their life is probably not how they're going to live their life. And so allowing them to go out and have those life experiences. And when you can actually come in and help when they're saying, Mom, Dad, I actually really do need your help in this. I'm really struggling getting an apartment or something like that, and I can't get a job. Then step in and help them get a job and help them get an apartment under certain circumstances, right? That's when the relationship can begin to be rebuilt, is when you're not just trying to help, when they're actually asking for help. And so I think if you're trying to help so much and nothing's happening, then it may be okay for you to do that. I mean, it depends on the circumstances, but then I would put money that at some point they're going to ask for your help. And that's when you can step in and give the help that you've been wanting to give for a long time.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And you're right. It is a very case by case kind of basis for sure. And child by child basis too, depending on the set of parents that you're with. I think that's really good advice. So I'm curious about, your personal non-negotiables. You've talked a little bit about the things that you recommend to your clients, but are there any particular habits that you do based on your lived experience, what you've learned about what works for you and what doesn't? What helps, you stay grounded and aligned in your purpose and like helps you show up for your clients in a sustainable way?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I would say you can only take people as far as you've gone yourself, right? And so I would say at this point, one of my hobbies is personal improvement. Like I love, all the woo woo stuff. Like I love breath work. I love going to the gym and sauning and doing an occasional cold plunge. I love going to retreats and being part of communities. I've been working with the same life coach for 3 years who's probably been one of the most transformational people that's been in my life. So I am doing a lot of the same things that I'm recommending to my clients. And so in terms of non-negotiables, for example, I was just home for Thanksgiving, and I will tell any family that when you're around the holidays, your kid is going to fall back into their old behaviors. There will be times where I'm at home and I'm just like not making the bed or something like that.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I'm at home, right? But the second I got back to Austin and I was in my own home, I was like, all right, the first day I'm back, I'm going to the gym. I love going for walks and listening to podcasts or I have like a vision playlist where I listen to music that really like invokes emotion that makes me feel excited. And so there's just like these little tools that I have that I know that same thing. If I'm having a bad day, I have these tools that I can use. And I think as you grow, you figure out what works for you and that becomes your toolbox. And so just always knowing that I'm going to utilize my toolbox, and that's something that's a non-negotiable. And also being very wary of my energy, right? Making sure that I'm getting enough sleep. And if I'm feeling really low energy, getting myself back to a point through my toolbox that I'm feeling at a level that I can actually make the impact that I'm trying to, because I feel like I can make that impact because I'm feeling good about who I am and what I'm doing.
Yeah, I like that. Those are really good ones. Better you than me right now. I need to get better at my personal non-negotiables because I have that bad habit of like immediately getting up and checking my work email or checking things like that, and then I get down the rabbit hole, and then it's I got up at 6:30 or 7, but now it's 10 a.m. and I'm like, oh no, I didn't go to cycling class like I told myself I was going to. I didn't eat breakfast yet. Like, oh shoot, and then
Well,
I throw my whole schedule off.
I will say, Amanda, like I do that too, though,
Yeah.
right? It's not like I feel like I'm perfect and so on top of it. And I think that's a big part of what I also do is admit that that is also me, right? The things that my clients are struggling with, even though they're 18, I still struggle with screen time. I'm still, work too much, right? But I think it's about breaking those patterns sooner rather than later. And just kind of like I call it like, what does a good day look like, right? What are the 5 things that I can do? And it's actually how I built Not Therapy, that if I do those on a daily basis, I'll consider it a good day. And so if I'm having a bad day, like I'm like, all right, tomorrow's going to be a good day. I need to make sure I'm doing these 5 things. And then it's just about getting back on the saddle, building momentum again. So I think it's okay to have those types of days, right? I'm just not able to be the type of person that just grinds myself to the death of me. I need to take breaks and I need to know when I'm pushing myself too much. And so just that toolbox of when do you feel the best? What are the things that work the best for you? And then getting back into that toolbox when you feel those things that you're saying. I didn't go to cycling. I might have woke up early, but I still didn't do my morning routine. That's okay. That we're human. We're going to do those things. But how do we just get back on the saddle and continue? Because, it's a lifelong journey, right? I think once I started the personal development thing, which I've been very heavily invested in for 3 years, I would always think to myself, haven't I done enough personal development yet? But I can't be leading my clients and honestly leading a movement that I'm trying to really do and have started doing with Haley if I'm not practicing what I preach, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. You would feel like a hypocrite, I'm sure. Any of your clients, especially the teenagers, they can smell that right off you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You'd be like,
absolutely.
that's bullshit advice. You don't even do that.
Yeah.
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 Oh my gosh. Colin, this has been awesome. We're coming up on our hour, and so I just have the final couple of questions if you still have some time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So these are the things that I usually try and ask all of my guests. So what do you want out of life, and have you found what you're looking for?
Yeah, I think when you first think about what you want out of life, it's like really grandiose. And I do want to have massive impact, right? I do want to lead a movement. And I think when we think about some like huge issues that are going on around in the world, I just kind of came to this realization that the work I'm doing right now has a bigger impact to impact the world than me like posting on Facebook about social issues or something like that. And so for me, I love living in Austin, Texas. I'm in an amazing relationship that, I love my girlfriend. We live together. I love my family. I love what I do. It doesn't ever feel like a job. I have not had Sunday scaries since I started Not Therapy. And so for me, I think that I have found what I feel like my purpose is. And, I'm going to keep doing non-therapy as long as I can. But then I feel like my purpose is helping people that have gone through the same situation as me. And it might not be the exact same, but it's still this mental health crisis that's happening with a lot of people. I do feel like I've somewhat found my purpose, but I'm still pursuing my purpose, right? And so then it can grow bigger and bigger. And so right now I wake up every day and I have some bad days, but I really am like, man, I'm so grateful for my life. If you had told me when I was starting Not Therapy 2 years ago that this would be my life, I'd be like, sign me up. And I didn't know it was going to look like that, but I'm just super blessed and super thankful for the life that I have and the friends that I've made. And as you begin to up-level yourself, those things become clearer and clearer, and you can just follow those feelings to create a life that you're really excited about.
I love that. I don't even know you, and I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
It worked out really well, and that's what you want for everyone, right? At least you want everybody to get to a point and get to a life that fits that for them, right? Not everybody can be Colin, but how do you make Colin's life show up in yours in that way? Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
How do you define success, and what does success look like in your life?
Yeah. Well, I'll always say I think success is subjective. I think when we get so caught up in what we think success is, we're less likely to find it. And so it's kind of back to your last question. I am successful right now, right? I'm doing what I want to be doing. I have great friendships. I'm in a fantastic relationship. I have a great relationship with my family. I live in a place that I love. And sure, would I love to be making millions and millions of dollars? Absolutely. But would I change anything that I'm doing in my life right now? No. Right? I would just have more money. And so I think I view myself as successful, and I think my accomplishments might become greater in terms of the milestones that I hit, but I don't think I need to change anything in what I'm doing right now in order to feel more successful. So I do feel like I'm successful, but I think it's more of a feeling. Do you feel like you're successful? I feel like if you're pursuing your purpose and doing things on a daily basis, you will start feeling successful, right? And the way that an 18-year-old feels successful is a lot different than what I probably view as being successful, right?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like success for you comes from the meaning that you're deriving from your daily life and from your business, not necessarily like the financial aspect of it. Yes, would be amazing if you guys grew and continued to expand and start hosting a bunch of retreats all over the world or something like that. The possibilities are endless there for you. And I think that is successful, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. If you could go back and talk to 16-year-old Colin when he was being sent out into the wilderness, what is the advice or affirmations or just general consoling would you give to him?
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with like my inner child, and I think Not Therapy is it's like the biggest self-development I've ever done, and it's just inner child healing, honestly.
Yeah.
And so what I would really say to him is all of this has a purpose, because there are so many times where I'm like, what is going on with my life? How did my life get to this point? And I would tell him that all of the things that you're going to go through have a purpose. And when I look at who I am today, it's built up on all these years of trying to figure it out. And so just letting him know that he's on the right path, even though it's really going to feel like you're not on the right path a lot.
Yeah. It looks like you're going up a mountain with no rope.
Yeah.
You're rock climbing with no belay. Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, that's really good advice to you. I love that. And then for anybody that's listening right now who may feel lost or without purpose, they're stuck, they're in a mindset that it's really, really struggling. What is the advice that you would give to somebody that wants, to make a change in their life, but they're just not really sure where to start?
Yeah, I think it's really, you already know what you want. You already know deep down inside of you. You might not know how to get it, but you somewhat do know what you want, right? And even people that are drug addicts or something in a really bad situation, they want to be feeling better, right? And so just take it one day at a time and just do one thing that's making you feel better and start building that momentum. You don't change your life overnight. It really is just a day-to-day effort of like, am I starting to feel better? And check in with yourself and change things when you're not feeling better. Just find those puzzle pieces that you need to put together to create the picture of what you really want your life to look like. But it's not going to happen overnight. So just be in pursuit of the things that you want, and just, you don't even know how to get them, how you're going to get them, but really just be in pursuit of like what you think it is that you want. Just like I said at the beginning, like with me wanting to work at the Mariners, I had no idea how I was going to do that, but I just was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and do it. Right. And if you can just pursue those types of things of what it is that you want, you will get to a point where you start feeling better about yourself.
I love that. That's really good. Well, Colin, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure chatting with you and learning so much more about Not Therapy. I wish I had a kid so I could just send him to you in general.
Thank
you
you.
don't even have a problem, but go talk to him. You'd have so much fun with this new mentor. I think that's amazing. Please tell everybody what they can do or how to follow you, how to support you, how to get involved with all of your businesses and such and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Our company website is nottherapycoaching.com. And I would say that's the easiest way to connect with me. And my Instagram is Coach Colin Mac. And so if you want to follow me, I use it for both personal and business related, but more so just trying to like practice what I preach. I post a lot of sauna content of like me listening to audiobooks and whatnot. But I think also just following, it's not.therapy.coaching on Instagram as well. We're working on growing our following base. It hasn't really been a big need, but in order to start a movement, we really do want to start making an impact in a free way too, right? Like in a way that just like watching a video can be inspiring to you.
I love that. Perfect. I will make sure that all of Colin's information is either added at the bottom of your screen here and in the show notes of all the episodes. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also reach out to me at Podcast for the Lost. All of our channels are hit their Podcast for Lost on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also reach out to us at hello@podcastforlost.com if you want to send us an email or submit listener questions for the Wanderer Wisdom episodes coming up later next month. And let us know what you think of the episode. Let us know what your favorite part was or favorite thing that you learned from Colin, and hit us up in the comments and we'll be happy to respond. But until next week, remember, wanderers are always welcome.